that roof pops up. Did you catch that? There's an entire elevated glass pod sitting on top of this vehicle, and once I explain exactly what's happening up there, you are going to see this whole concept completely differently. What you're looking at right now is an AI-generated concept design. Let me be straight about that up front. No factory is building this, no showroom has it. It doesn't have a price tag or a delivery date. It's pure imagination. And honestly, that's exactly what makes it worth your next 15 minutes. Because when a designer has zero real-world constraints, no accountants, no engineers pushing back, no safety regulations slowing the vision, this is what road living looks like. We're going full walk-around today. Exterior, interior, powertrain logic, smart systems, all of it. And I'm going to end by telling you the one design decision on this concept that I think is genuinely a decade ahead of where the industry currently is. Stay with me, because the front of this thing is just the warm-up. Let's start at the front. The first thing that hits you is the face. It doesn't look like a motorhome. It doesn't look like a bus. It barely even looks like a van. What it looks like, and I say this deliberately, is a luxury saloon car that someone scaled up to an almost absurd size and then refused to let the proportions suffer. That front fascia is wide, planted, and confident. The LED signature lighting cuts a sharp horizontal line across the face, and it sits low, purposefully low, which does something really important. It makes this enormous machine feel like it belongs at speed, not at a campsite, at speed. The grille treatment is bold without being aggressive. It's layered, there are depth and shadow happening in there, and the chrome accent work frames it with a level of restraint that you simply do not see on vehicles in this category. Most luxury motorhome concepts go heavy on chrome and end up looking flashy. This one uses it like punctuation, strategic, purposeful. Now let's move down the side. This is where the concept earns serious respect. Look at that side glass. It's not just big, it runs almost the full length of the habitable section in one near-continuous sweep. And when you think about what that means for the person living in this thing, the natural light, the sense of space, waking up in the morning and seeing a mountain range or a coastline instead of a wall, that's not a design detail. That's a lifestyle philosophy built into aluminum and glass. And it works. It genuinely works. The body panels along the side have these long, subtle character lines that catch light beautifully as the vehicle moves, or even as you walk around it in a lit space like this. The finish appears to be a deep pearl white with a metallic base layer, and the way it transitions into that dark lower body treatment creates a two-tone effect that visually lowers the vehicle's apparent height. Smart. Because something this tall needs every visual trick available to keep it from looking like a box on wheels. The proportions are remarkable. You've got a 6-wheel configuration back there, and I want to come back to why that matters mechanically, but visually, what those dual rear axles do is stretch and stabilize the stance. The vehicle doesn't look like it's sitting on its wheels, it looks like it's planted on them. The wheels themselves. These are large-diameter, multi-spoke alloys, the kind of rim choice that says this concept was not designed to crawl a gravel track. These rims are here to be seen at motorway speed, in an underground car park, pulling up somewhere that matters. The tire profile looks low to mid. Again, performance intent, not off-road intent. Now, that roof. I mentioned it at the start, and we need to talk about it properly. What you're seeing is an elevated glass pod structure that rises above the main roofline. Based on the proportions visible here, it appears to span roughly the rear 2/3 of the vehicle's length. The pod has its own frameless glass panels on multiple sides, and from what the render suggests, it's designed to be an occupiable elevated space, a lounge, a sleeping loft, a sky-gazing platform. The structural logic of getting a glass-enclosed elevated room onto a moving vehicle at this size is genuinely complex, but the visual result is extraordinary. It makes every other motorhome roof look like a missed opportunity. The side entry door is a full-height, full-width sliding panel, and it's open in this render, which gives us our first glimpse of the interior. We'll get to that, but what I want you to notice right now is the threshold height. It's low, intentionally low. The step-in experience appears to be almost level, which in a vehicle elevated this high is an engineering statement. The exterior alone puts this among the more visually compelling motorhome concepts I've analyzed. But honestly, the exterior is the easy part. What I think is happening inside this thing is where things get genuinely interesting. We can actually see into this concept, which is unusual and useful. So let's use it. That open side door is giving us a direct sightline into what appears to be the primary lounge area. And what's immediately obvious is the ceiling height. Based on the proportions relative to the door opening, we're likely looking at something close to 2 meters of clear headroom, possibly a touch more. In a motorhome, that number matters more than almost any other single measurement, because at 2 meters, you are not ducking, you are not hunching, you are not constantly aware that you are in a vehicle, you are simply in a room. And that distinction, that psychological shift is everything when you're living somewhere full-time. The seating. What's visible through that door shows 2 oversized lounge chairs in a cream or warm ivory leather, positioned to face what appears to be a central living zone. The chairs look captain-style, individually articulated with what might be integrated armrests and side tables. This isn't RV furniture. This is the kind of seating language you find in a private aircraft or a high-end marine interior. The flooring visible at the threshold appears to be a light hardwood or hardwood effect composite, and that choice alone communicates intent. You do not put hardwood flooring in a vehicle you plan to take off-road. You put hardwood flooring in a vehicle you plan to take to Monaco. Now, the elevated pod space. This is the one I told you to wait for. Based on the exterior dimensions, that raised glass section represents a meaningful volume of additional space. We're likely talking something in the range of 3 to 4 meters in length and a full meter or more in height. The designer appears to have proposed this as a dedicated sleeping suite, positioned above the main living level, accessed presumably by a compact staircase or ladder integrated into the forward section. Now think about what that actually means. You have a living level, lounge, kitchen, bathroom, and then a completely separate sleeping level elevated above it, with glass on multiple sides. Imagine lying in bed in that upper pod looking at a night sky, or a city skyline, or a mountain at dawn. In a vehicle, you drove there yourself. That is not camping. That is a different category of living entirely. Moving forward, the kitchen zone would logically sit behind the cockpit and ahead of the main lounge, tucked along one wall to maximize the living area footprint. In a space with this ceiling height and that glass, a galley-style kitchen along the near side wall makes the most architectural sense. We're probably looking at an induction hob, under-counter refrigeration, possibly a combination microwave oven, and storage integrated into the wall panels above. The key here isn't size. The key is that every surface, every handle, every material would need to match the level of finish visible in the lounge, and based on what we can see, this concept appears committed to that consistency. The bathroom. This is always the constraint. In a vehicle this width, and we're likely looking at somewhere around 2.5 meters internal width, a proper wet bathroom with a separate shower enclosure is achievable. In fact, in a concept like this, a wet room format makes the most sense. Full height tiling, a recessed linear drain, a rain shower head, and a vanity unit with proper storage. No compromises. The cockpit, what we can see of it, carries the same design language as the exterior. The dashboard appears to be a wide, horizontally oriented structure with a large central display and what looks like a second, driver-facing screen. The visibility out of that front face, given the depth of that windscreen glass, would be exceptional. This is important. In a vehicle this large, driver confidence is directly tied to sightlines. Smart systems in a concept like this would almost certainly include climate zoning, separate temperature control for the lower level and the upper pod, automated window tinting on those panoramic glass panels, integrated ambient lighting with scene presets, and probably some form of remote monitoring and app control, because anyone commissioning something at this level expects to manage it from their phone. If I had to sum up the interior philosophy in one sentence, this concept is not trying to fit a house into a vehicle. It's trying to make you forget you're in a vehicle, and that ambition shows in every visible detail. Let's talk about what would actually power all of this. Here's where things get technically interesting, and I'll keep this accessible because you don't need an engineering degree to appreciate how clever the thinking would need to be here. A vehicle at this scale, 6 wheels, full glass upper pod, premium interior systems, is heavy. We are realistically talking about a curb weight somewhere north of 6 tons if this were ever engineered for reality. That weight, combined with the aerodynamic profile of a tall, wide body, makes the powertrain question genuinely complex. In a near-future production scenario, the most logical propulsion system for this concept would be a twin electric motor setup, 1 axle per driven rear axle in that 6-wheel configuration. That's not a guess, that's the physics talking. You need torque. Lots of it, available instantly to move this mass smoothly. Electric motors deliver peak torque from 0 RPM. No traditional internal combustion engine gives you that without significant lag. Battery capacity is the obvious challenge. To give this concept a realistic daily range, let's say somewhere between 300 and 400 kilometers before you need to think about charging, you would be looking at a very large battery pack. The technology to do that at acceptable weight doesn't fully exist in production form yet, but the trajectory is clear. Solid-state batteries, which are coming, would change this equation dramatically. Now, that roof. The curved glass panels of that elevated pod are an obvious candidate for integrated photovoltaic cells. Not as a primary energy source, the surface area isn't sufficient for that, but as a meaningful supplementary system. In the world of this concept, solar integration on that upper structure could reasonably extend off-grid capability by several hours per day in strong sunlight, enough to run climate systems, lighting, and onboard electronics without drawing on the main drive battery. If someone were ever brave enough to actually build this, the technology challenge wouldn't be the motors or the battery chemistry or even the glass. It would be the weight management. Every kilogram of glass in that upper pod, every piece of premium interior material, every oversized alloy wheel, it all compounds. The engineering discipline required to keep this concept's mass at a level where the range figures remain usable would be extraordinary. All right, my honest take. What this concept does genuinely well. The design language is coherent from front to rear, which sounds obvious but is actually rare. Too many motorhome concepts look like someone grafted a luxury face onto a utilitarian body and hoped the seam wouldn't show. This one reads as a unified vision. The proportions, the glass treatment, the wheel choice, the two-tone color strategy, it all points in the same direction. That takes discipline. What I find questionable, the elevated glass pod, as stunning as it is visually, creates a center of gravity challenge that can't be wished away. All that mass sitting high, the glass, the framing structure, whatever sleeping or lounge furniture lives up there, raises the vehicle's center of gravity significantly. At motorway speed, in a crosswind, that matters. A lot. In a real engineering scenario, this would be one of the hardest problems to solve without either compromising the pod height or adding significant ballast weight low in the chassis. The one detail that impresses me most, it's the side entry threshold. The near-flush, low step-in access at this vehicle's overall height tells me the designer was thinking about the daily lived experience, not just the photo shoot. That kind of detail is where genuinely thoughtful design reveals itself. Anyone can make something look impressive from 20 meters away. The question is what it's like to step into it every single day. What I would change, I'd want to see some exterior storage access, hatches, compartments, somewhere to put the real-world stuff. Because as beautiful as this exterior is, living in a vehicle means gear, cables, outdoor furniture, sports equipment. Right now, the exterior is so clean it almost feels sealed. A real build would need to solve that without ruining the visual. This is a concept. It's fictional, it's AI generated, and it's still one of the most compositionally thoughtful mobile living concepts I've had in front of me. The fact that it doesn't exist and may never exist exactly like this doesn't make it less interesting. It makes it more interesting because it asks the question without having to live with the answer. Before I go, I want to know your answer to this. Would you choose the elevated glass slooping pod, or would you trade it for a lower roofline and more practical cargo storage? Drop it in the comments. Genuinely curious what this audience thinks. And if this kind of deep dive concept analysis is why you come to YouTube, there's a lot more of it here. Subscribing is the easiest way to make sure you catch the next one. But that's the interesting part about purely fictional concepts. They force the question, and the question is almost always more valuable than the answer.